Remember, the content on our show is for information only.
It is not intended to provide medical or other professional advice.
Hello, and welcome to Placebo, a podcast where each week my sister and I try and teach each other something interesting about healthcare or medicine. I'm Logan Richards, and this is my sister.
And I'm Kaylin Richards.
And today on the Placebo podcast, we are going to do a little bit of fact-checking. But don't worry, it's not political fact-checking.
Oh, no.
We're all done with that.
I don't know.
This is going to be fact-checking of a different sort.
Okay.
So recently, there was a new podcast released by a favorite author and podcast mogul of mine.
A mogul of yours? Are you part of the
he's a favorite
organization?
podcast mogul.
Okay.
Stephen Dubner.
Yeah. Freakonomics.
Co-author of Freakonomics, the book series, and the main host on Freakonomics Radio, which is a popular podcast, of course. So he's started a new show called Tell Me Something I Don't Know. I was trying to talk to you about it earlier when we just met here to record, and you wouldn't let me, so now we can. No, you had to save your thoughts for the mic. Okay, so the new show is a game show, and it's a public radio game show, of which there are many, but the essence of the game show is the same as the essence of Freakonomics Radio, which is, of course, to either learn something that you didn't already know, or learn something that you... I forget how he says it. It's like learn something that you didn't know but should, or learn something that you thought you knew but didn't. Something like that. So same thing. People from the audience, apparently, come up on stage and share their facts that they think people don't know and should. They seem to be quite well-prepared audience members. That's what I thought upon listening. Yes. So obviously we'll post the link to the show if you haven't listened to it, because we're probably going to make... Kaylin and I have both listened to it, and we'll I didn't know this was the topic, though. I just happened to listen to it this morning. We'll make some references to it. So yeah, they are quite well-prepared. Three of the four, I think, were doctors. Right. Which is maybe relevant to our show. Maybe. So it's sort of like a competition, but it's not super serious. I think their prizes were like a stuffed bird. Yeah. Not like a taxidermy toy. The way that you win is there's a panel of judges, and they're supposed to consider a variety of variables about your fact. Only one of the variables of which is, does it seem to be true? Mm-hmm. And the show does this by using a fact checker. They did some fact checking. Now, the fact checker supposedly works for 538. Yeah, he is the host of their elections podcast. Okay. Well, who knows if we can trust them at all anymore. Oh, their model was good. I like 538, but I don't have to stand up for it here. Okay, so his job... They did better than a lot. That's true. Yeah. His job is to quickly search... It seems like, although, we have no idea how live the actual show is, his job is to do some quick internet searching about the facts and see if they at least sort of seem to be true, and give them kind of a thumbs up or thumbs down. Can he quickly find some evidence for it or not? Right. Or provide some other background information, it seems like, too, sometimes. And so his job is important because his evaluation of the facts that each of the contestants are bringing is meant to inform the judges on if they can believe that fact or not. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't think it's important for the game show necessarily if the fact is 100% true or not. Which I think is a little dangerous, because people remember what they hear if it's catchy. Right. And they don't necessarily... And then they'll repeat it as fact. They maybe will not remember that only half of that was true and half of it was not, or something. Right. Well, you make a good point, and so we are going to jump right into that now. Yeah. Okay. So, one of the... I love to Google things. I can fact check whatever you want. One of the facts was by a doctor from, I think, Atlanta, and it was about sleep. Here's a clip from the show.
In 2013, some scientists made some dramatic discoveries in mice. And what they found is that many mouse nerve cells in the brain actually shrink during normal sleep. And when the cells shrink, the spaces between the cells widen by as much as 60%. And those spaces and the nerve cells themselves are then bathed by spinal fluid washing through the brain. This was shown to increase the clearance of certain proteins that build up around nerve cells during normal wakefulness, including beta amyloid, which has been shown to cause Alzheimer's disease.
Okay, and now a clip from a few minutes later when Stephen Dubner asked Jody Abergan about the facts.
Jody Abergan, Dr. Walter James is telling us about why we sleep, a kind of brainwashing, as he describes it. What can you add to it?
A lot of amazing things happen when you sleep. Hormones get released, your heart and your breathing slows, giving your system a break. You become, I guess, somewhat paralyzed a little bit.
This guy's one job is to say, is the fact true or not? And I was very annoyed. He went ahead and talked about some other things for which it sounded like he wasn't really sure if they were true. He's like, oh, well, you become sort of paralyzed and your breathing slows down to like give your system a break. And then he just throws out this random fact, which is just completely useless and has nothing to do with the... So
I don't know if his job is not really to be a fact checker, but more to throw in other information, it seemed like to me.
Perhaps, but I found it to be annoying.
Uh-huh.
I felt like it was his job to prove it's true, and all he did was mention other random things which are equally as likely or unlikely to be true, and no evidence was provided for anything.
Well, when I do research for a podcast, it always takes me longer than I think, in the realm of hours, not in seconds. So I think
that his job is challenging.
And perhaps impossible.
I don't think he added anything to the conversation. Well, okay. So the show was taped like a couple months ago.
Yeah, okay.
I do not think it would have been hard for him to find... So maybe he added something to the show in terms of comedy, either his own comedy or giving material to the comedians, which is clearly their job to add comedy.
I'm wondering if that was his actual purpose versus fact-checking, because it didn't seem like he was...
It really would not have been hard for him to find the actual name of the phenomena that happens and find lots of research on it. There is a lot. So
well, I don't know.
I thought
I feel like I want to stand up for him because I like his other show, but...
What? Oh, you mean the Jody Abergan?
Yeah.
Well, I don't mean to be mean to him.
Okay.
But we're going to take the chance to do our own fact checking.
Yes. Okay.
This brainwashing is done by what's called the Glymphatic System.
Well, I know the lymphatic system.
Right. Okay. So tell me what the lymphatic system is.
Well, to be honest, it's always confused me a little bit because it's a system of like blood vessels, but not blood vessels, right. Lymphatic vessels.
Full of lymph,
which is
a type of fluid
that are all throughout the whole body. Mm-hmm. And they're meant to, I think, move fluid and like waste products away and around the body.
Right.
Like if people have, what I know about the lymphatic system is that if you have cancer, it often concentrates in a lymph node, which there are located throughout the body. And if a lymph node is removed, for example, because you have cancer and they're trying to get it out of you, if a lymph node is removed, you might not have good drainage in that area. So if a lymph node is removed from your leg, maybe now you're always going to have a lot of swelling in your leg because the lymph doesn't flow out of it like it should.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what I got about lymph.
Oh, I think so. Lymph is most of your body's waste removal system. The way that it works is by at least generally taking fluid from the interstitial spaces and taking it back to the nodes where it's then filtered back into the blood and then goes, through the liver
and the liver and whatever.
Yeah, all that stuff. So, but an interesting fact to note is that one place where you will not find any lymph vessels is the brain. But what's interesting about all of this is that the brain, even though it weighs about 2% of your body, uses a much larger percentage of your metabolic need. Mm-hmm. And the central nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord itself, are very heavy metabolic users. Mm-hmm. So that means that they probably produce a bunch of waste. And the problem here is, how are they getting rid of their waste if the one way that we know our body gets rid of cellular waste is not part of the spinal cord or brain? Right.
The brain is kind of a closed-off system in a lot of ways. There's like the blood-brain barrier to prevent things that might more easily get into the bloodstream from affecting the brain as easily.
Right.
Yeah.
And we can explain that. So on the blood vessels within the brain are lined with epithelial cells that have tight junctions. So it's just a type of connection between the cells around the vessels that don't allow anything through it, which is not present in other places.
Right.
So the G in the lymphatic system comes from
glial cells?
Yeah, a nerve cell type, which is the glial cells. So they just kind of smush those two things together. But the reason for that is because these glial cells, from what I can tell, it's these little, I think they call them like end feet or something like that. So these branches off the glial cells make what the researchers call a paravascular pathway. So you have your blood vessels going throughout the brain.
Okay, not the vein.
So you've got arteries and veins. On either around them are these glial cells making kind of like another layer of tunnel almost, so that there's space on either side of them for the brain's fluid to run through. So that's called CSF, cerebrospinal fluid.
It's the same fluid that runs continuously down into the spinal cord.
Right, and it's part of what gets nutrients and things moving all throughout the central nervous system. And as we'll see here, it also plays a big part in the cleanup and waste removal. So, what the doctor said, remember he was a sleep researcher.
Oh, on the show, yes.
Right, what the doctor said on the show was that as you sleep, the CSF, I'm not sure what he said.
I think he might have said that.
So the cerebrospinal fluid flows throughout your brain, cleaning out waste products, which include the infamous beta amyloids, which are the dementia producing or causing.
Associated with Alzheimer's.
The dementia associated proteins.
I'm sure there are other.
Yeah, there's like tau bundles and other stuff. Anyways, he noted that the CSF, as you were sleeping, increased its flow because space between the cells increased.
So there's just more room for the fluid to move.
Right.
So if the space between the cells increasing, the cells are shrinking in themselves.
Pretty much. Well, so here's the glymphatic system.
Okay.
So from what I can tell, his fact is correct, although we got no information from the show on if it was correct or not. But so he was just talking about the function of, and not even really like what it does necessarily, because I think there's a lot of research to be done in that front, but all he was doing was mentioning like the mechanics of the glymphatic system, which has been called a lot of things. I saw like the dump truck or the garbage truck for the brain, or the, what was your website calling it? Brainwashing. Dishwasher for the brain. So this is the glymphatic system. The couple of things that are interesting about this and that lead us to more things that will be important for healthcare is that it cleans up these proteins, all sorts of different types of waste proteins that can build up and cause all sorts of neurodegenerative diseases. But also I just found the fact that it doesn't work very much when we're awake to be interesting. So the original research was done...
go ahead.
Ask your question.
Why do we need to be asleep for it to be functioning? Is your brain not working very well when the neurons are...
Right.
Shrinking or something?
It's interesting because sleep evolutionarily is not a good thing. It's putting you in a decreased sense of awareness, which
risky.
is risky for, evolutionary for survival.
Plus, when you're asleep, you're not, because you're not defended, right?
Right.
And plus, when you're asleep, you're not doing anything helpful either. You know what I mean? You're not
for your community, or we are social beings.
Or you're like you're not getting food. You're not making sure you're safe. You're not making your home safer. Whatever.
Right. So the fact that we have to spend a third of our life asleep suggests there must be something important, but we don't know exactly what that is yet. It used to be thought that maybe because the brain is so metabolically needy that it needed to rest. For part of the day
It's not really, it's resting in some way, but it's not doing nothing.
Research has shown that the activity in the brain only goes down on average 15%. So they think that that's not a very good reason anymore.
No. I mean, because even if you're, even when you're asleep, you might be dreaming. You are dreaming some of the time, and the brain is doing a lot then.
Brain is still very active.
It's keeping you alive. It's keeping you breathing.
So where we go with all of this is this cleaning system. So it was originally first described by a group of researchers at Rochester...
University of Rochester.
School of Medicine at the University of Rochester.
Says my article.
Yeah.
Dr. Macon Nettergaard.
He's one of the main guys, but from what I can tell, the head researcher for this study, which was in 2012... was Jeffrey Iliff, and he's from the University of Rochester. So what they did was look at the brains of both sleeping and awake mice.
Another mice study.
It's mice. So this is actually interesting. It seems almost to be a accepted fact that this glymphatic system exists in mammals and therefore humans, or mammals and primates and therefore humans. But
primates are mammals.
Yeah. What I can tell, I did do a lot of looking for research, and it's hard to know whether we know for sure that it exists in humans. Now, you'll understand why after I tell you how they were able to measure the movement of this glymphatic system.
Did they put something in their head?
Not really. So they used mice, and they used what's called a two-way fluorescent microscopy. So type of imaging, but...
Is it the same as fluoroscopy?
What's fluoroscopy?
Well, they use that in surgeries to make sure things are placed correctly when they can't see it physically. It's like a imaging, it's a live X-ray type of thing, I think.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, then I think it's sort of like that. This one uses infrared light, and from what I can tell, it can only measure and see up to a couple millimeters.
This must be the micro aspect.
Right, yeah. So they used mice, and it looked like they had a craniectomy, part of their skull was removed. And then covered so that because they needed to the thing that was measuring them needed to be right on the brain in order to see it.
Now, that people have that done sometimes for medical reasons, not for studies.
Well, yeah, but
then they have to wear a helmet.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if they had little mouse helmets.
I don't think so. So anyways, they're using this type of imaging that I'm not familiar with, but can apparently is like a live X-ray thing. And so then what they did...
It's similar.
Yeah, something similar to that. So then they did a radioactive marker on the cerebral spinal fluid. So that is usually in the subarachnoid space and the ventricles. So there's these big open areas inside the brain where the CSF is made. And it goes through a pathway that makes it so that most of the time the CSF is in this subarachnoid space, which is on the outside of the brain. So it's kind of always bathing the brain in this CSF.
Circling around the outside.
Right. And at that point, there are many ways where it can get out. There's these kind of perforations, I guess, in the subarachnoid space that allow the CSF to drain out and then get picked up by the bloodstream.
Doesn't it come out into the neck?
Right. Most of it will come down through the
carotid?
The veins in your neck. No, the carotid is on its way up.
Carotid artery. Jugular.
Yeah, jugular. Most of it comes down through the venous system through your neck. But there actually is there's connections where it can escape out from where your cranial nerves will come out.
Okay.
So anyways, the CSF bathing the outside of your brain and spinal cord in the subarachnoid space. But what's interesting is that while you are awake, there's almost no CSF that makes its way within the actual depth, the tissue inside of the brain. It's all on the outside. But when you're asleep, the amount of CSF that gets into the inside of your brain area actually improves dramatically. And so there's an interesting video that came with the study where they show And you can actually see this on a TED Talk that was given by the researcher, the Jeff Iffel guy. So that's two ways you can see the video. So they show the interior area of the brain where you can see blood vessels coming through. Of course, the blood is always going through the brain. But then they've done the radioactive marking of the CSF, and you can see in the awake mice, there's nothing on the screen. And then in the mice, they have a time lapse from when it's awake to when it falls asleep, and you can see just this green flood of the green stuff in the video is the CSF. Super interesting. And the reason that this happens is because of those glial cells actually shrinking and allowing the CSF to flow into the brain tissue.
So it's not the neurons that are shrinking, it's the glial cells?
That's from what I can tell, it's the glial cells. So they form those pathways, the paravascular pathways. So they form the paravascular pathways. And I think that CSF is going through the paravascular pathways at all times. Now, when these glial cells shrink, they let the CSF into the interstitial spaces. So the spaces in between cells. And that allows the CSF, which is going on its normal paravascular pathway, like following major arteries and arterioles, and then coming out, that allows it to go through the rest of the brain where it doesn't normally get the chance to go when you're awake.
And then when you wake up, how does it drain out of there?
Well, it drains out because I read a little bit on like the reason for the direction of like the fluid flow, and I won't be able to explain it very well. It's like fluid dynamics, there's a polarity to the fluid, and then there's, pressure gradients, and so it's always going one direction.
It seems like when you first wake up, though, it would still be all in your brain and it would kind of gradually come out.
Well, maybe. So the one hormone or set of hormones that they have found that seems to be at least partially related to the change in size of these glial cells or the neurons is norepinephrine and epinephrine. So when you start to go asleep, norepinephrine will come in, and that will trigger the glial cells to start to open up space for the CSF to start coming in. And then the opposite, epinephrine, will come in and increase the size. So the interstitial spaces change by a huge percentage too.
But what about when you're woken suddenly?
You're asking a question I don't know. I'm sure that there is a way for the fluid to drain out. It seems to be.
Wonder if sometimes when you wake up naturally you feel better, and if you're woken suddenly you have a harder time waking up.
Well, it's a good hypothesis. There's a lot that we don't know about this system, and I think that right now it's being used to describe things that we already know a lot about. Like everyone already knew that when you slept good, your mind was clearer the next day. You were able to think better. And if you were sleep deprived, you can't think very well. Everyone already knows that. But now we're able to better describe it because we actually know how it's working. So it's very true that maybe you're suddenly awoken and then you feel groggy the rest of the day, and but I have no idea.
So it seems to me, though, that this research is interesting, but two things. Like, one, we don't know that it actually is the same in people, because it would be difficult to really study. It's likely to be, but from what I can tell, it's not been demonstrated in people yet. But I think it's been demonstrated in every other form of animal that we've done it on. I saw cats, various types of primates, mice. Now, why do cats need to sleep so much more than people?
Who knows?
Are they much slower at cleaning out their brains?
Perhaps.
Because that's another thing, like different species and different individuals in the species have different requirements for sleep. Yeah. Well, keep in mind that this was first described in 2012. Since then, there's been a lot of research into a lot of interesting aspects that this might go. So the first one that I saw that was interesting was done in mice again, but they found that if the mice was sleeping on its side, the glymphatic system worked more efficiently than if a mice was sleeping on its stomach or on its back. So side sleepers are better off? Well, for mice. No, so they were suggesting mouse curl up because prone, which is on your stomach. Yeah.
was the least effective form of sleeping for the glymphatic system for the
I'm
mice.
sleeping prone.
And
It would just be like its little nose
It's just like, on its stomach.
flat down.
So, but they said, well, maybe this is true. They hypothesized that maybe because the mice are actually active and standing in prone, that maybe that's why it works less well when they're sleeping in prone.
So it would be the equivalent...
Of a human sleeping and standing, I guess? I don't know.
But now horses sleep in standing,
So,
and that's their active position.
right.
Oh, here's a picture of a mouse sleeping in prone. I just wanted to see what it looked like.
Okay, good.
It's pretty cute, actually.
That's not helpful for the people who can't see it. So that's interesting, of course. So maybe if the same is true in humans, there's some type of sleeping position that allows for better glymphatic drainage and cleaning up of your brain than another sleeping position. Mm-hmm. Just interesting. It seems...
So we would want to do the opposite. So it would be like for people on your head. I guess on your back. That would probably be the most
I don't know.
opposite of your normal position.
Another interesting thing is that it seems like some studies have started to show the glymphatic system begins to work less well as you age, which is, of course, not surprising.
I like everything.
Like all our systems.
Yeah.
And then another interesting thing that I read is that a huge percentage of neurodegenerative diseases, meaning things like Alzheimer's and dementia, Parkinson's. So this study, the quote is that all prevalent neurodegenerative diseases are characterized by an accumulation of aggregated proteins. Mm-hmm. So that's a big statement, but
that's okay. I would say, is that true for Parkinson's? I thought they had the destruction.
Yeah, but they do also have Parkinson's has some plaques too.
Okay.
Yeah, but anyways, it doesn't mean that it's
the sole feature,
the only thing, but it seems like it is at least partially implicated in all neurodegenerative diseases, which is of course interesting because this system is the thing that cleans out waste proteins, these ones that are causing disease from your brain. So researchers are saying, of course, it doesn't prove that the better sleep you get or the more sleep you get, the less likely you are to have these things.
Because probably some people are more prone to...
But it certainly helps.
Yeah. Maybe some people are just more prone to have more of these proteins formed in the first place, or...
Right. There's probably too many factors. But this is one that we... until 2012 haven't known about. Mm-hmm. So the actual number for the rate of beta amyloid clearance from your brain is there's a 65% increase.
From a mouse brain.
A mouse brain, yeah. A 65% increase in beta amyloid clearance when you're asleep as opposed to when you're awake, which is huge.
So if you sleep more... So I think sometimes people are reluctant... Well, there are many reasons why people don't get enough sleep, I guess.
Well, I think just like Stephen Dubner said, everyone is kind of annoyed by sleep in this day and age because it just seems like a massive waste of time.
But one reason that people don't get enough sleep is because they just don't want to go to sleep because they want to do something else,
Right.
And so maybe the moral of the story is that in the end you'll be able to do more because you won't develop diseases like dementia or Parkinson's or things
well, that's
in the long run.
The one comedian from the show tried to make that joke that John Bon Jovi said he would sleep when he's dead.
Oh, yeah.
And then the doctor responded, well, yeah, perhaps because he's probably going to die earlier, and so he'll get plenty of time to sleep when he's dead.
Well, I guess you could call that sleep, but not really.
So anyways, that's it.
That's it.
I just took a point from the show that I felt wasn't given its full opportunity to be explained or even demonstrated as true.
I know. He
figured out what it was.
He still won, though, didn't he?
He won, yeah. Which is why I thought, well, what the heck?
He and someone else won. I felt like sometimes Jody Avergan, sometimes he did a good job with the fact checking. Actually said like, yes, I see this information, or no, I don't.
See, that's the thing. I think this will be interesting because it's not the show itself is not meant to be like completely data driven like Freakonomics or some other type of show is.
But it was also like
But his listeners expect that.
I know, so it was a little bit off putting for me. I'd like to see, this was their very first episode that we've both just seen, and there's no more out yet. So I'd like to see where it goes.
Yeah.
Because I think maybe they were still finding their format a little bit.
Yeah, they probably were. Also, as the show's wrapping up, and you, the listener, may have noticed some crow noises in the background. It's because outside of our window currently is a horde of crows in the trees, all...
Some Steller's jays mixed in, too.
Yeah, all furiously yelling at an owl that is sleeping in a tree in our backyard.
Yeah, I
And
can
they
only
have
imagine
been
it's still there because...
for the last hour,
Yeah.
so we apologize for that. Okay, if you enjoyed the episode, please share us with a friend or give us a rating on iTunes. You can visit our website, placebopodcast.com, for show notes or to send us any suggestions or feedback. Hopefully Stephen Dubner will respond to this show.
You can also find us on Facebook.
Thank you to James Aiken for our music.
And thank you to you for listening. We'll be back with a new episode next week.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.